Hey guys, it's Maddie or Books with Maddie. Today we're doing the Folklore Book Tag. So I don't know who actually created this video. I will try to find out, or this tag. I will try to find out and link their original video below. But I saw a couple people do this last week and I wanted to join in because I love folklore. And the thing is, I've never liked Taylor Swift ever in my past. Like, not that I've disliked her, I've just never been interested in her music before. But Books Twitter was like blowing up about this album, and so I listened to it, and oh my gosh, I love it. It's like that's like my genre right there. So we're doing it. We're doing the Folklore Book Tag, and basically this just goes through the album. It goes through every single song, and there's like a prompt for each song, and then you match a book to that prompt. With all of that said, we will just hop right into the book tag. So the first one goes with the song The One, and the prompt is a book with an ending that left you speechless. I feel like this applies a lot of times towards like series, and like the ending of the series like leaves you speechless, or like thrillers, and I don't read a lot of series or a lot of thrillers, so it took me actually a while to do this one, but I'm going to go with a pretty basic answer. So I am going to go with a thriller, and it was one of my favorite thrillers. Wait, no. I think it's the only thriller I read last year, but it was 5 stars. I loved it. But it was Verity by Colleen Hoover, which is a domestic thriller kind of situation. The ending of this just like absolutely left me speechless. I was just so confused, and like I think about it still all the time. I won't say too much, but this is like a thriller mystery romance situation, so that's really interesting. I like the romantic aspect of it because I've never read a thriller with this heavy of a romance in it. Also, I haven't read that many thrillers, so yeah. But the ending of Verity by Colleen Hoover left me absolutely speechless. The next one is for the song Cardigan, and the prompt is a book that made you feel happy and sad all at once. Okay, this book is definitely made me happy and sad. So it is Salt of the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. So it's a historical fiction which deals with World War I and the Wilhelm Gustloff, which is like a huge maritime tragedy. So obviously it's going to have some sad aspects to it, but honestly this whole book just made me feel I feel like happy is the wrong word. I think what made me happy about this book was the kindnesses that people showed each other, and the ways that people cared for each other and showed each other love in such a tragic time. I think that made me feel really, I don't know if happy is the word. It made me feel happy, yeah, but like also it was really sad because like these people were going through horrible things. So I don't know. It's a very wholesome book, and I think that made me happy about it, but it was also very, very sad. I feel bad saying that it was happy, but also like it's happy for the people who endured it and like who got through it. Like, yes, that's happy. So yeah, this is what I'm going with. Happy and sad. Next prompt is for the song Last Great American Dynasty. The prompt is a book with a fascinating and extremely well told story. And instead of choosing one book for this, I'm going to choose an author. So I think an author which perfectly encompasses this prompt is Taylor Jenkins Reid. This song immediately makes me think of Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And the way she writes stories are so atmospheric. I'm trying to think of a better word. There's so much room in her stories. They're so realistic. They're so full. Like, her stories are so full. They include so many different aspects of life. The characters are so realistic and visceral and three-dimensional. I love her books. I've only actually read 2 of her books, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six, but I can say that confidently about both of these books. They're extremely atmospheric, extremely well told, and honestly just fascinating stories about people who are morally gray and realistic and three-dimensional, and I highly recommend both of these. I am looking to read more of her books in the future, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. The next prompt is for the song Exile, which is probably my second favorite song on this album. Love it. Love to see it. Okay. Which is a book you wish you hadn't read. There are a couple that come to mind. I will say 3 really quickly because there are 3 that just like, oh my gosh. Okay, the first one is like, okay, this book was just so boring and dumb, and I really like, I get like angry when I think about it because like, how could somebody read this and be like, yes, let's publish this, like this is a great book. I didn't even say what it was. This is 2 Steps Forward. I read this last month and it was 1 star, and it's about these 2 people hiking, and they like keep running into each other and like fall in love, but it's dumb. It's so, I did not like it. I'm really sorry if anybody really likes this book, but I really disliked it. I thought it was boring and terribly written. So this one I just wish I hadn't read, because it was like, I felt like I was hiking, honestly, when I was reading this book. Now, a more controversial opinion, honestly, this is with great sorrow that I say I wish I hadn't read this book, which is The Darkest Minds. I read this last year, to be honest, a little late to the game. The ending actually broke me in half and like scarred me from reading dystopian in the future. I literally hated the ending of this book more than any other ending of any other book I've ever read. I literally cried for about 2.5 hours, like, that is not being dramatic. I cried for 2.5 hours after reading this book, and I called my friend on the phone and I was like, I'm not okay right now. So I wish I hadn't read this, because I wish I hadn't gone through that. I still haven't finished the series because I'm terrified of this author and what she will do to these characters who I actually adore. Honestly, I fell in love so hard with these characters. They were just like so good. And then, oh my gosh, okay. I will never recover. I will never be okay. And lastly, this is slightly more controversial depending on who you are, but Beautiful Disaster by Jamie McGuire. This is the worst romance novel I've ever read. It is cringy and terrible and toxic. Please don't read this or model your relationships after this book. It was terrible and it romanticized abuse, and I wish I'd never read it because it was terrible. So, yes. Next, My Tears Ricochet, which I think is my favorite song off of this album, and the prompt is a book that made you cry uncontrollably. Now, we could say The Darkest Minds, because I just talked about how uncontrollably I cried over that book, but let's talk about another book that made me cry uncontrollably, Champion by Marie Lu. I cry uncontrollably very easily over books. This one really broke me almost as much as The Darkest Minds, and now I'm reading Rebel this month. Y'all wish me luck. Those two books are the reasons I don't read dystopian anymore. Okay, next, Mirror Ball, a book that feels like it was written just for you. And I have a really great answer for this book. It is one of, like, actually the last book I finished, because I haven't finished a book yet this month. Beach Read by Emily Henry. And the reason behind this is, the main character, January, I really related to her a lot. As somebody who's an English major and possibly looking at writing in the future, I would definitely lean more towards what January writes rather than what Gus writes, and she writes like romance and happy ever afters and stuff like that. I don't think I would necessarily write romance, but they definitely would be happily ever afters. I'm obsessed with books that have happily ever afters, and she has this entire concept where her mother was going through cancer, and the reason why she writes happily ever afters is because she found escape in romance novels and happily ever afters. I've seen the word happily ever after so many times, and so she writes that escape for other people, and I relate to that so much. That is one of the main reasons why I don't like books with sad endings and with things like that, and why The Darkest Minds and Champion made me cry so much was because I was looking for an escape in those books and I didn't get that at all. I got a lot of pain. And so I really related to her mindset in this book because I totally agree with that concept of like, I love happily ever afters, but she comes to face the reality that happily ever afters aren't always true. And it was something that I really needed to hear and really needed to understand. And I think this book helped me a lot with that. And also it was just like a perfect romance. It was so good. It was so fluffy and fun to read, and it honestly was an escape despite the commentary that had it about grief and loss and family and things like that. I thought that commentary made it even better, and so I really needed this book like at the time of my life that I was reading it, and I felt like a lot of the things just like really spoke to me and were like they were written just for me. A lot of the things I was like, I have thought that exact same thought in my life, and I need to understand that this is good or this is bad or whatever the case might be. So I really felt that about this book. 7 is the name of the next song. And the prompt is a childhood book that makes you feel nostalgic. This one is easy. The Hunger Games by Susan Collins. I read this when I was in 5th grade, I believe, which is too young to read The Hunger Games. And this was my favorite book for like a really long time. And I just recently reread it, and I remembered how much I loved it and how empowering it was to read, and how Katniss was actually the first strong female main character that I ever experienced and read about, or even, you know, seen on a screen, and how impactful and powerful that was to my life as a, you know, child and now as an adult. Next is August, which is another one of my favorite songs, a book that reminds you of summer. this one I'm going to go with The Summer Before the War by Helen Simonson. I'm going to be talking about this book a lot on my channel, just warning, because I just read it and I absolutely loved it. This obviously takes place in the summer before the war, referring to World War I, and it basically follows this like group of people, like some of them are related, some of them are just friends, and in East Sussex, 1914, this is like the most peaceful, warm, wholesome book I've ever read. It just feels like a really peaceful summer, and it was something that I really needed when I read it in this really chaotic summer that we're having right now, and it was just really perfect for right now. Next is This Is Me Trying. The prompt is a book that deals with loneliness and sadness. For this one, I'm going to choose Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, which is a classic, and the reason I'm choosing this one is because I read this early this year, and it's one of my favorite classics of all time. Jane Eyre is such a relatable character and such an empowering character, and what I like most about this book is how heavily in the beginning it deals with loneliness and sadness, and how it shows so viscerally how she overcomes those burdens that she's experienced in the past, and the mental and physical things that she needs to do to accomplish her own negative beliefs about herself. And I absolutely loved it. I think that it deals with loneliness and sadness in such a realistic way, and it's not like burdensome. It's like, this is just realistic, this is just life, and I honestly just loved it so much. I think that Jane Eyre is such an inspirational character, and you should really read it. Like, if you're interested in picking up a classic, an easy to read, really like enticing classic, I would definitely recommend Jane Eyre. The beginning is a little bit slow, but push through. I believe in you. You can do it. Read it. Yes. The next one is Illicit Affairs, and the prompt is a book that gave you a book hangover. So many. Well, the first one that comes to mind for me is the one that most recently gave me a book hangover, which is Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo and Crooked Kingdom. Both gave me a huge book hangover. After reading these books, I honestly like get in this mood where I'm just like, I don't want to read anything else anymore. Like, I just want to keep reading these for the rest of my life, which like isn't cohesive with like having a booktube channel and having like a book Twitter and a bookstagram. Like, that's just not cohesive. Like, you can't just read 2 books for the rest of your life. I just read Six of Crows last month, right before the reading rush. I was like, hey, I don't want to read any other books now. But I did, and it was fine. But yeah, these books seriously give me book hangovers. Next, Invisible String, and the prompt is a book that came into your life at the exact right time. And honestly, I know I already talked about this book, but I would say beach read, honestly. I talked a little bit more about why earlier in this video, but this one definitely came to me at a very pertinent time in my life, as well as Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. I know it's kind of odd to say 2 romances that came into my life at the right time, but honestly, it's true. This came to me when I was, when I had moved to college. Like, I went to college, but not at home. Like, I moved away to college, and I really hated it. I was having a really hard time. It was a really toxic environment, and there was a lot of really toxic situations that I was encountering, and so this was like the perfect escape. I read this book in like 3 hours and just read it over and over because it was such a perfect like escape from the mess that I was living in, and I really, really loved it, and I still reread it all the time when I'm in a really bad place or I just like need a break from something, and I always read this book. So I think it came to me at the perfect time in my life. The next one is Mad Woman, a book with a female character you adore. Controversial opinion. This is not my actual answer, but just like quick controversial opinion. I love Amy from Gone Girl. She's literally my hero. I don't know if that's okay or not, but I adore her as a character, but that's not my actual answer. Yeah. Another female character that I adore is Marianne from Normal People. I loved her in this book so much, and from what I saw of the TV show, I liked her a lot, although I liked her a little bit better in the book. I love to see how much she grew throughout the book, and how much she kind of came into her own and developed her own life, that like she built her own life around herself, and I really admired that. And yeah, I just really admired her as a character, so yeah. Next, Epiphany, a book that is haunting. This is the one that I thought of when I heard this prompt, and it is Bloodwater Paint by Joanne McCullough. I would say I'm haunted by this book. This is one of the most powerful books I've ever read. It basically follows the story of the painter Artemisia Gentileschi, who was an actual painter. This takes place in 1610 in Rome. It basically follows her story of how she was empowered by her assault, and how she stands up for herself in a time where women were not at all viewed as equal to men. It's written in verse and honestly is one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life, and I highly recommend it. Next is Betty, and this is like one of my favorite songs off the album. I know I said that for like 7 different songs, but this is honestly probably like one of my favorites. And the prompt is a book couple that fills you with yearning. Honestly, all book couples, because book couples are so unrealistically perfect. The answer I've written down is Ruby and Liam from The Darkest Minds. When I tell you I was heartbroken by this book, like, do you understand? This was my favorite couple. Like, this was it for me. And then the freaking ending, and gosh. It hurts too much to say that. So, I'm gonna go with a different one. Hazel and James from Lovely War. Oh my gosh. Honestly, any couple in historical fiction, because they're just like so proper and perfect and like respectful. Honestly, yes. So I'm going with James and Hazel from Lovely War. Next, for the song Peace, the prompt is a book character you'd die for because you love them so much. My first instinct is Inej from Six of Crows. Honestly, probably would die for her. Honestly, probably would die for Katniss as well. I don't really know, to be honest with you. Honestly, would probably die for Kaz. Honestly, would probably die for the entire cast of Six of Crows. Would give up my life for any single one of them. So, that's your answer. Any of them. It's okay, just, we're fine. If you know, you know, and you're not fine. The last one is the song Hoax, which is another one of my favorites. And the prompt is a book that you thought you were going to love, but you didn't. And this is the most legit answer I can think of. There's some that I have been like, wow, I think I'm really gonna like this book. And then I'm like, oh, that's like 3 stars. That's like average. But this one I like actively pretty disliked. And this was like very difficult for me to talk about this. But what was this book? Like, I know we love Leigh Bardugo, but like, does anybody else low-key super dislike this book? Like, please don't come for me, but this book was really bad, right? Like, is it just me? But like, I gave it 2 stars. I really was disappointed by it. I had to really struggle through this book, and I've never had to do a Leigh Bardugo book before. But honestly, what was this book? I was really excited for this book because number 1, it's Leigh Bardugo. Number 2, when I told people I was reading the series, they were like, Siege and Storm is the best one. And I was like, I'm ready. Yes, I usually love the second books in series the best. What's this book? Like, is it just me? Or is this bad? Like, hear me out. This book was not great. I mean, I cannot say a Leigh Bardugo book was bad. But I can say this wasn't good. Like, I didn't enjoy it. There was like, it was really frustrating because there was a love hexahedron. Like, everybody all of a sudden was in love with Alina, and I was like, what? And like, remember when everybody just like wanted to be with her? And I was like, not that she didn't deserve that, but I was just like, this is advancing the story. How? Like, it just seemed very unnecessary. Okay, you know what? I'm done. I'm done trashing this book. I didn't like it. I'm sorry. I thought I would love it. Everybody said I would love it, but I didn't. Leigh Bardugo, I thought I would love it. I didn't. Anyway, that was the last question. I hope you listened to Folklore. If you haven't yet, you really should. Let me know what your favorite songs are. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I upload every Wednesday and Saturday. So stay tuned for those videos. I hope you have a great day, I hope you have a great week, and I hope you have a great life. Bye-bye.